How are we doing? Do we have Mike? Yeah, we have audio. I think we have audio. That looks like we have audio. And we have people, which is more important. How was my vacation? That's good. Let me put that in the notes. Uh, my vacation. Um, yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll just watch all of them. And so, how were your midterms, friends? How was that? I heard there was some Joel theme. I was not there. I was in Cowichan Bay while you guys were delivering that, getting some much needed rest and shut eye. So there had an Airbnb with the missus. How many? Yeah, like here's the thing with midterms is that you end up just standing by whatever you stand by at the end, right? So how many were like, yes, I was standing by what I had hoped to accomplish? Who feels like 80% that's true, at least 80% or more? Who feels like 60% or more? Who made some lemonade out them lemons? Yeah, okay. Yeah? Yeah, and okay, so Rosie says everything was really impressive. It's important we capture that for forever. How did you feel about like uh, looking at it and be like, I can't believe I made that? Anyone? Because you get to kind of see the trick, and you know how that works now. But like, yeah. Was anyone able to like take a moment, looking at what they had accomplished, step back in time 4 weeks ago to your 4 weeks ago self, and be like, you're gonna make this, and just imagine your inner 4 weeks ago person being like, no, what? Anybody? Anybody? You should try that. Try that particular experiment. Yeah, you're just learning for loops. And programming a thing is like a million for loops, right? So, all right. Cool. I have not gotten to say hi to Otis yet. I'm sure he'll come around. Right. So, yeah. You guys had computer science week. How was computer science week? Super computer. Yeah. It is. Computer science is hard work. It's very much the puzzle solving aspect, you know, solving them puzzles. It's definitely that sort of like, it's the Sudoku part of what we do. Do they have a lecturer? Carla's there? Okay, cool. I'm going to grab their door. Okay. Sorry. Right. So, you guys dealt with like. So I feel like week 5. Okay. So basically, what I'm going to tell you is that everything you do from the midterm on is everything you were doing from week 1 to the midterm, but better, but like just more sophisticated. Like, but with a monocle, right? While listening to an opera about the life of Miles Davis or something. I don't know. That sounds sophisticated, right? And meeting your banker at the martini store. I don't know. I don't know how sophistication works. So yeah. I know martini store is just a bar. It's fine. Okay, so everything you're going to be doing. So last week was very similar to week 1 in some ways, where it was just focused on programming itself. We weren't making anything. We were just kind of focusing on the craft of programming per se, right? On its own, by itself. And then what we're going to be doing this week is going to be a lot like week 3. We're going to be doing front-end stuff, client-side JavaScript, which you've already done some of, right? Like, you guys did some jQuery? Huh? A little HTML, CSS? Huh? Huh? Add some forms? Huh? Use some AJAX calls? Huh? Grab some data? Change your DOM based on that data. And week six is about React. Week 7 plus, the next Monday and the Tuesday is all Rails. And Rails is going to be another, like, not so much more sophisticated, like, oh, it's a better way of doing things than no, but it's like it's going to have some tools to let us make some stuff real quick. So React week, why? So what I want to kind of talk about first is my vacation. I went to Cowichan Bay and also to the Othello Tunnels on our way to. Have anyone ever been to the Othello Tunnels? The text doesn't capture it. They're beautiful. They're by outside Hope. These tunnels that were dug into rock for the thing to go through. If anyone's ever taken, yeah, for the trains to go through. Yeah, I have pictures. I will share them as part of my notes. But yeah, the Othello Tunnels, and then also went to Armstrong, BC, which is where my wife is from, and that's where Armstrong cheese came from. And Armstrong cheese is not there anymore because Saputo bought them out and just basically took the name, but they still have good cheese making places. So that was fun. All right. I might have missed some of you. And we did not stop at that store in Kamloops on the way. That one store in Kamloops, that one store in Kamloops? Yeah. I'm not saying we didn't think about it. I'm just saying we didn't. So, right. So, frameworks. I talked a while back about birdhouses and dog houses and houses. Not houses for houses, but houses that are like really houses, right? And skyscrapers, right? And what was I saying about those? What was my big kind of takeaway about birdhouses and dog houses? That we're building them as a start. Yeah, scale matters. That, like, more is not just more. More is different. When things get bigger, our human brains lose the ability to kind of keep track of what's going on. This is a problem not with code. This is a problem with you. Just going to make eye contact with a few more people. Talk about. This is a problem of, like, things grow bigger than our brains can handle. Now, I remember when I started like programming seriously, went to BCIT, took the CST program, and I remember like they started us with Java, and we'd write some Java stuff, and they were like, "Oh, you want to write good comments and really descriptive names, right? You want to keep really good style, and you want to have really good blah 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 blah, right? Because you don't want to, it makes your code more readable and more easy to understand." And I'm like, did you, like, have some sort of cranial event happen that you can't, like, did you play, like, football in high school or something and kind of got jogged a bit? Like, this is a pretty easy thing for me to keep in my head. I can keep all the parts of this in my head. And up to that point, like, kind of things I had been working on or puzzles I hadn't solved, or just my intellectual challenges were all kind of, like, small enough that they fit in my head, right? And then I started programming a little more, and felt the pain of what happens when things get bigger, because it becomes a little bit bigger than I can keep in my head. And because of that, I have become really fastidious about breaking problems down into smaller pieces. Only thinking about the things I have to think about when I have to think about them. And one of the big skills is being able to break code apart and figure out how we can break code apart better into smaller pieces. And then kind of refactor and kind of, put our split parts together. So one of the ways that we do this in programming, and one of the ways we get things done, is that for a lot of problems, they kind of have very similar patterns, of how you would break things apart. There's a lot of this type of code, and there's a lot of that type of code, right? So when it comes to a problem that we are using, that we have like a lot, it makes sense to create libraries and frameworks. And for the next 2 and some change weeks, you are going to be spending a lot of time learning how to use frameworks. So I wanted to kind of introduce the concept of frameworks and talk about how to approach them. Because here's the other thing that's going to happen, is that we're going to teach you React and we're going to teach you Rails, right? And then you're going to get a job, and you are going to sit down, and they're going to be like, okay, cool. We use Vue and Python. Or we use Angular 6 and Hanami. Or we use Sinatra and Backbone. Or we use blah, 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 right? You are going to be put down in front of a different framework. And you are going to have to learn how to reason in that framework. So I want to talk about frameworks by themselves for a little bit. So what is a framework? There are competing definitions about this. There's conflicting ideas. There is some talk even among the staff here. Hey, is React a framework? Is React a library? Right? So I'm going to share with you my definition for a framework. This is Joel's definition. A framework is a library that will run your app if you write your app in its according to its rules and patterns. So in order for me to use a framework, I have to break down all my app logic and express it in a way that the framework can handle. And then the framework will do the rest of the work for me. Now, you've already been using one framework to write a bunch of code. And Express, that's right. That's right, Express. We've also been using jQuery, but jQuery is not really a framework. It kind of gives you a bunch of utilities, but you don't have to write your logic in a certain way for jQuery to appreciate it. You have to write your operations in a kind of jQuery way, but not your like, oh, this is a this and that's a that, and all this belongs here and all this belongs there. So let's take a look at let me get all this stuff gone. Let's take a look at expressjs.com. Okay, what does it say here? Fast, unopinionated, minimalist web framework. So I'm going to say that a framework provides opinions and abstractions. And the first opinion is going to be you want to make X, whatever X is. You want to make a something. Okay? So if you're using Express, what is it you want to make? Yeah, you want to make a web server, right? So with Express, you want to make web server. Okay. All right, so let's talk for a moment about the other opinions are going to be something like we favor A over B. There's going to be some A that they are favoring, and usually over some B. We favor A optionally, and there's an over B, right? So Express says that it is unopinionated. Its opinion is that it's unopinionated. Shingus. Good to see you, buddy. All right. So its opinion is that it doesn't have many opinions. Or its opinion is that it's forcing you into as few opinions as possible, right? So we favor letting you do you over providing a bunch of built-in utility. So, for instance, parsing a body, that's a thing you're probably going to do every single time, right? Does Express include it natively? Cookies is a thing you might want to do every single time. Do they put it in? No, you have to bring in a separate library, which isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of a rail-thin thing upon which you can hang a bunch of functionality that you want. So the idea is that, like, hey, we provide the slots for any functionality you want, but you'll have to put it in there yourself. Okay. And then it's also, you know, it's another example. It's fast, so we favor speed over bulk. And by bulk, I mean that, again, a bunch of those utilities that kind of goes through everything. Those also, like, if you have a bunch of utilities you're not using, but it's going through them anyways, it's also, like, it's slowing the process down, right? So they favor speed over bulk. And they have an abstraction. And what's the abstraction? What form do you have to write your app in for it to work in Express? Not just EJS, but even EJS is an added utility, right? What's the one big shape that your app logic goes into? Routes, right? Route handlers. And route handlers themselves are really just kind of special middleware. Basically, for your entire for your entire Express app to work, except for some EJS, it's mostly just middleware. A lot of it. So one abstraction is middleware. That's it. That is, that's all you write. Even your routes, they have rec. They can take in request and response. Did you know that for any route you can say comma next and run that next? And a function that does rec res next, that's a middleware. If you construct a router, that's a middleware. If you have any route thing, that's a middleware. If you construct, like, basically anything that you make is, you're just stacking middleware on middleware. And it's going to kind of like flow through those middleware. It's a similar model to, like, who has played the electric guitar ever? It's a similar idea to, like, you take a guitar and you put it into, like, a distortion effect, and then you put that distortion effect into a delay effect, and so on and so forth. Well, usually distortion, then chorus, and then, like, my delay goes at the end so that I can do some things with it. But that's, and usually then it's my overdrive into my, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So, right? So it's just mostly like, okay, we're just kind of passing this through these things, and then eventually comes out. So that's the one abstraction of Express. Did you guys get to write a route handler without Express? An HTTP dot on, like, you can write web apps without Express. It's just use the fetch. Yeah, because fetch. Does fetch just do the request? There's a way to, like, have a route handler that's just like basically all of your traffic goes to this one route handler, and then it has to become like gigantic, and it's annoying. So Express is an abstraction around that. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to take a look at it again. All right, so let's talk about now React. So we're going to talk about React as a framework. So if you are using React, what do you want to make? A React app. Well played, Gaurav. You're not wrong. Yeah, so basically you want to make a dynamic HTML or dynamic browser app, maybe. Now, we will be able to use there's a /mobile app because there is a React native. And technically speaking, you can write your own reconciler, so React can be about anything you want it to be. But we are not teaching how to write a reconciler for all the reasons. So I'm even going to say React DOM. That's what we're really kind of focusing on, right? So you want to make a dynamic browser app. Okay? So what does React favor? Well, let's take a look at the React.js page. See what they think they favor, right? See what their story is. They are declarative. We favor declarative over what's the opposite of declarative in the world of coding? Starts with an I. Imperative. So basically, the difference is that declarative is, this is what I want to make. Imperative is do this, do this, do this, do this. Right? A lot of, like, procedural code could be called imperative code because it's a series of instructions. Do this, and then do this, and then do this, and do this. Declarative is all about creating expressions, compiling expressions, putting these expressions together. We favor the component-based approach. Building encapsulated components to manage their own state, then compose them to make complex UI. So we favor composition with components because the words component and composition are cognate. It means they come from the same Latin word. So when you think component, you can think composition. And learn once, write everywhere. We don't make assumptions about the rest of your technology stack. React can also render on the server. Oh, yeah. So we favor reusability. Is kind of one of their things. You can have reusable code, and favor reusability and being tech agnostic. So a React app, being that it is declarative, I can take something that understands its expression and then does the DOM thing. I can take something that understands its expression and then makes maybe it'll make I can put it into a renderer and create that as like, maybe I could even put it in my EJS. Hey, also compile this React and it'll work. I can do all sorts of things like that with this because it's just an expression, right? If I write something in another environment that can read this expression, I'm good. I could ostensibly use this to just make HTML or SVG files if I wanted to. Yeah? So it doesn't, if I use React, it doesn't really matter like where I use it so much. Like, or basically, it's possible to write something in another framework that's like able to understand the React and do something with it within some other context other than just this. Whereas with jQuery, because it's so much about like, oh, I find the DOM things, and I build the DOM things, and I make the things, and change the things, and change the things. It's very much like this only works on a live bit of DOM. It's very hard to make jQuery work as a renderer, right? So, Okay. And abstractions. What is the one? What is the shape of things that you're going to make for in React? Components. And components can be composed of other components. Right? We said component, therefore composition. I will tell you that in your career as web developers, however long it may be, like whenever there's a new JS conference, I go through and I watch the videos. And I have my trusty bottle of whiskey next to me. Because anytime anyone says, it's just like Lego blocks, you just put them together. Look, right? That is how you watch some JS Conf. Mind you, the later videos, I'm not sure what went on with them. Because it's a really common refrain in JavaScript talks. Is like, oh, we have components. You put them together. It's just like Lego blocks. But it is just like Lego blocks. If you could make like mega Lego blocks, like if that was a thing. But yeah. So we have components. And components, because you have a component that's going to, you have a root component at the top that is your app, right? And then that component is going to have like components that it composes. It becomes a tree. You guys remember trees, right? Trees sounded familiar. And the trees work kind of like any other, like trees have certain really nice guarantees. And part of that is that like this part of the tree is this part of the tree. I don't have to know about this part of the tree to understand this part of the tree, right? I don't have to know about this branch to know about this branch. I can just kind of calculate things about this branch by itself. I can traverse up and down, and once I've traversed up and down, I know I've done the traversing up and down, right? They don't have to be interconnected. One of the great things about React that when I write jQuery code of any size, I have to be so careful. I find myself being very, very careful that I never want my code up here to change the effect of my code down here. Right? I don't want to be using code up here that screws up my component over here. When I'm dealing with a component on this part of the page, it should not deal with components on this part of the page. They should be separate. So that I don't have to worry about this code making this code act differently. Right? With React, we have that guarantee. As long as you don't get squirrely and do DOM manipulation within your React component. That is you can do it, but just be gentle. Yeah. Right. Yeah. So the question is, I'm gonna repeat it for posterity. That's all right. So the question is that when we are building an app in React, is it kind of like how we were building cards in Twitter? And we build them, we kind of put stuff into them, and we then added something else. It is like that. The difference is going to be this. When you were doing Twitter, it was like, oh, let's say you did it in like the most drawn out approach possible, right? Where you're like, you have an article tag, and then you dot append a header tag, and you dot append, right? So that dot append, dot append, dot append, that is imperative. A less imperative approach would have been like, my article is an article that is also composed of, within it, a header and a this and a this. So the difference, it's going to be doing the same thing. It's going to have the same logic. We're just going to be expressing it declaratively instead of expressing it as add this to this, add this to this, add this to this, add this to this. Right? So that's going to be a big part of what we do. Is it too early for coffee? It might not. So what I am going to do, let's just start by talking about, we're going to talk a little bit about JSX. No, it's not. No, we're going to have coffee. It is now time for coffee. Let's make coffee happen. Alright. If y'all want to take a seat, we're going to get back. We're going to come back to the thing. Hello, friends. How's it going? Alright. So, the first half, I say it's more like first third, mind you, in the intro, the prelude, the prologue. Yeah, there he is. Now we got, all right. So in the first little bit, we talked about just frameworks in general. And within that, well, framework of understanding, you know, opinions, abstractions, we can kind of now talk about React itself. And we're going to talk a bit about, I want to talk a bit about JSX, and then we're going to talk about like how to make a component. In the breakout, we're going to talk a little more about state and props and that sort of thing. And we're just going to talk about writing JSX today. So, writing JSX. Good. I'm also excited. Hence the bright eyes. I wasn't sure if you were like, yes. All right. So JSX is JavaScript with XML. So not long after the creation of React, we've realized, you know what? This is a lot to write. You know, when we want to create an element, we have to write some stuff. So there was already some like work with compilers and stuff, and here's the thing about JavaScript and the JavaScript community. JavaScript community loves kind of just writing a version of JavaScript that works for them. It's kind of their bag. It's kind of their thing. Good heavens. All right, sorry, things moved out and I got distracted. I thought maybe we were falling. Like, ever there on a train where like another train's going and you're like, are we moving or is that train moving? And it takes a moment. And you look out the other window and you realize that you're moving. So the yeah, like, so about, I want to say 2009 or so. So you guys remember us talking about ES6? I think I had you guys for the ES6 breakout, right? And I started talking about ES5 and how ES5 was stuck for a long time. And then a guy whose name was Jeremy Ashkenaz created something called CoffeeScript, and some people were like adding stuff to it. And basically, people kind of just made a thing that compiled the JavaScript and let them write the kind of code they wanted to write. Yeah? And the same thing kind of happened with like this is part of what got the ES6 moving, but it also kind of set a precedence that if you, like, one of the things about being a JavaScript developer is that you might write languages that transpile the JavaScript. Like, you might just write a lot of things in languages that transpile the JavaScript. So you may find yourself, like, we've had grads who've worked with, like, there's a language called ClojureScript with a J, Clojure, which is a JavaScript port of the Clojure language, which runs in the Java runtime. There's languages like there's TypeScript. Which has, it's JavaScript, but it has, okay, come on, let me see an example. Quick start. React, okay. No. Let's go to the playground. So it's like, it's that, but it's JavaScript, but you can also create types. And therefore, if I say factorial hey, it's going to be like, I can't use hey because factorial is expecting a string, or expecting a number, not a string, right? So this kind of adds a step. There's another, there's Flow.js. Flow, a static type checker for JavaScript that does a similar, let's go try. Again, they're doing the same thing. They're expecting x to be a number. So if I try to say, cannot return x because number is incompatible with string. Like here it can't do that. So I might say x.toString, and all of a sudden this will be fine. Right? And it'll it'll print out. Yeah, don't worry about ASTS in the story entirely. And then you have, yeah, let's take a look at PureScript. Try PureScript. There's got to be an easier. I think they're going to do like this whole Reacty what's it. But it's basically Haskell, but Haskell that compiles to JavaScript. And there's just a world of languages that compile to JavaScript because some people just want that. Let me bring up one more. ClojureScript. Get started, quick start. So you may have JavaScript that looks like this, right? I'm pretty sure that this this wants you to run things in Java, which I do not want to do. But yeah, so this is a really common mania in the JavaScript world, is writing languages that compile to JavaScript. Or sometimes we call it transpile because they're not really compiling to like a machine code like C and C++ do. They're compiling to a different, totally human readable language. Right? But there's a few things you get to have. Sometimes it's about convenience. Sometimes it's about like, it's about having a step that lets you know if you're at, like, it might be able to help you solve some problems. For instance, if I had this, I want it to tell me that I tried to use a string for factorial. That's stupid. That's dumb. That's dumb stuff. Right? This is dumb. This is a dumb. I should not be like. It would be nice if my program told me before I ran it that this was the case. And a compiler step can do that. One of the things I've heard it said is that, you know, a good friend is one who stabs you in the front. And that's what a compiler step will do. So with JSX, we're going to have a compiler step. And one of the things about that is that it is going to turn our Java, like we can write kind of different JavaScript, and we can have something out that's like ES5 ready. So we can write the most crazy ES6, ES7, ES 2018, ES 2019 stuff that we want. No, hold on. It goes ES6, ES 2016, ES 2017, ES 2018. That's right. But the actual tool that's going to be doing this is something called Babel. Babel is the thing that actually does the compiling of taking one language and turning it into another. Is it Babel? Yeah, I was going to say Babel, but either way, I'm pretty sure it's like Babel. I don't know if I always thought either way, we can. So so here's the thing about this. We're having an ES 2015. We have React. I don't think stage 0 is a thing anymore. So ES 2015 is going to be able to do things like, for instance, if we wanted to write some real ES6 stuff, you know, if I wanted to say const first rest equals 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Like it'll turn my ES6 into ES5. Okay. So now I know this is going to be compatible with browsers way back until the way back, right? I don't have to worry about using stuff that I had problems with new array once, but it's nice to be able to say like first rest equals right, and this will create a utility function to do the thing that now we just have in ES6, right? So if I want to do something that's ES6, but I want it to work in browsers that don't support ES6, I can do that. And when I say ES6, that's shorthand for ES anything greater than 5. I also have, so there's some presets here. Right now is ES 2015. If I did not have either of these, it would just take JavaScript. It would be an alchemist that had, you know, transformed lead into different lead. So here we have lead into the gold that we want. So I also have the React preset here, which means it's going to let me write JSX. And it's going to take my JSX. There are some other languages that actually use JSX, but this is going to be compiling it to a React sort of thing. So a little bit of that. One of these numbers. Yeah, so JSX itself isn't specific to React. This particular JSX compiler is going to be specific to React. And then you can make something like, there's a language called Preact, which uses JSX. You could write a JSX interpreter of your own if you felt fancy. But let's use this. Okay, so I'm going to write an expression in JSX. Way to go. All right. I blame you. There it is. No worries. Okay, so you'll notice here that my errors are here. So I get to, before it compiles, I get to know that it shouldn't. Right? It's handy. So JSX expression equals. I'm going to use parentheses just to be like careful. You don't have to use them, but. So let's say I wanted to make an H1 tag. Like that. Okay. JSX expression equals react.createElement H1. You'll see that's a string, H1. Okay? And so that means that this is going to become an H1 tag if I actually used it in anything. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a CodePen.io. I'm going to grab some of this stuff. Fourier font's interesting. And then I'm going to create from templates, React Starter. Okay, so this is an example here of if I just had H1. In fact, I might use this from here on. I can see that in my compiled JS, it says react.createElement H1. Okay. All right. So if I put some stuff in here, hey, and I'm going to say this is lecture JSX example. So if I said, hey, my compiled JS has H1 null, and then, hey, this is going to be where my props live when we get to uncompiled. But yeah, okay, H1 null, hey. All right, so this is the component I will be using, its props, and then its content. Okay, so let's take a look at what contents we can put in here. I have just right now, hey, I might say, hey, and make a small tag, and maybe I think that's hey copyright, right? And then this becomes hi null, hey, and then everything past this is more of the contents. Okay, there is the text hey, and then there is a small tag that has no props of its own, and its only thing is this /x_a9. So that's a Unicode character that becomes this. Okay. Now, one of the things that we do with HTML, HTML does have tags that can be open or closed, and we can put things into any given tag. We can have contents. But what's another way that we put information on an HTML tag? Attributes, right? And an attribute is something like ID is greeting. So now, if I go here and view my compiled JS, well, now we have some, and that we're being passed as props, and it's a, yeah. And this prop just says like, hey, I have an ID of greeting. If in my CSS I said greeting color tomato, there it is, red, right? Well, tomato specifically. Or Rebecca purple, right? I know, sad tale. Let's go back to my uncompiled Babel. I can add a class. It's going to say class name because reasons. Although actually that is going to be changing back to just class. I think class name might be deprecated in future versions of React, so you can watch out for that. But class name equals copy. Pen saved. I'm going to go here and just say dot copy. Not text transform. It's going to be. Is it font style? I want to say. There you go. Font style italic. It's italic now. Right? Okay, so that's been added. And those props have become attributes like the ones that we know and love. So let me now add a style. And this is where it gets weird. Because everything that we've done so far, that's my indent? That's insane. There we go. That's much more manageable. Okay. This particular thing we're kind of used to, you know, there's the name of the attribute equals and then a string. And when we were doing attributes in HTML, we could only really ever do things with strings. Like it was always strings and that was it, right? But we can also, with props, actually have more interesting things than strings. And when we say class name equals string, it's actually a shorthand for like ID equals this dynamic expression, which in this case is a string. So if we look at it now, we're going to see that, yeah, ID greeting, this doesn't change any of the way that this looks, right? This still is like key, a string, key, a string. It's just that now, like, we're kind of showing the real nature of it, that this is shorthand for this. All right, so let me build up a style element. Another thing I can put in here is objects. So I'm going to say const style equals, what's some style we want to do, huh? Strikeout. Yeah. That's text CSS strike through. It's text decoration line through. Awesome. So text decoration, you'll notice that this is camel cased, not spinal case. So instead of being text dash decoration, it's text uppercase. But still the same thing. Still the same thing and line through. And I can say style equals, and I'm going to pass the style object. And indeed it has applied and has become an inline style. Simple enough? Fair enough? That's enough? That's enough? Okay. So I'm just going to get a little. Okay, it's clearly not happening. Do we have to save it? Nah, it's fine. Oh, because of commas. Ah, thank you, little compiler step, letting me know. That didn't work. All right, fine, fair enough. We're fine. Okay, so this is now. So we've created some HTML elements We've used props to give them attributes. There's another thing that we can use props for in creating these HTML attributes. We can pass, some of the things that we can pass is we can pass, strings and numbers and booleans and any other type that we want. But we can also pass a function. And in fact, that is how we are going to attach event listeners. So I might say, I'll leave that there. So for instance, I might say on click. Now I have to pass a function. I'm going to show you a thing that I see students do all the time, and I sometimes do myself. Const on click. This is going to be a function, right? I'm making a function. We're good. I'm going to say alert hi, right? So how do I pass that here? Well, it's a function, so on click. Wait, why did it pop up? I didn't click anything. Because I invoked it. I have to pass the function expression itself, not, I don't call that function, right? Now it works. I can also, like, let's say that I want to, I'm not sure if I should say this because this might, you don't have to make it a variable. You can just say, I could easily pass this through. No, I could just say that if I wanted to. And I often do. I sometimes will like move away from this style just for my own clarity, just to keep track of like what I've created and where I've created it. And sometimes what I find is when I don't understand what I'm making, or I'm not sure that I understand what I'm making, I will make more variables just to see kind of built out, kind of like I did with that promises lecture that one time. I'll just make more variables to kind of break out into further steps instead of just chaining and chaining and chaining and chaining and chaining. So this is another example of like where, yeah, I can do this, but it kind of makes more sense just to break that out and say on click.
I just meant like on your actual function. Like you don't need the constant. You could just have a name function.
Yes, I could have just said function funkytown on click, like that. Yeah. Alert hi. Of course, now it's mad at me because, yeah. So, but again, okay. So, right. So this has all of the HTML stuff. Now, the next thing I want to talk about with JSX, I'm going to save this. I'm going to fork it. And I'm going to say lecture. Okay. So here's this example. I'm going to take out all this stuff. It's going to be mad at me, but I don't care. Okay. Now, the same way that I have the ability to make dynamic stuff like this, you know, I also have the ability to kind of include dynamic stuff in my, just in a spot here, right? So for instance, that copyright element, I could say const copy small tag equals, assign this to a variable. Oh, come on, you. Right? Like that. Also, I might put parentheses around this. Okay. Copy small. And instead of including it, I can just put it as a dynamic expression and just say copy small tag. And there it has been included. So I am able to kind of make these expressions somewhere else and then put them here. Okay, so this becomes a valid JSX expression. Now, what can I include? What can I include as a dynamic expression here? What will actually work? Well, there's three categories: things that we will see on the page that it'll be happy with, things that it will ignore, and things that will throw an error. So visibles, ignorables, and poop. I don't know. What are we going to call this? Irritatables. There we go. Right? So what other expressions can we include that will be seen? Also, let me change my view. Oh, come on. All right. So, what are some other things I could put in here that will be seen? What are some other types of things? In fact, I'm going to include this as a div. Well, there's one that we're already using right here. Which is any valid JSX expression. So we can include a valid JSX expression within, we can kind of compose a JSX expression of other valid JSX expressions, right? Okay, so that's fine. What's another type we can use in here? If I wanted to include some text, what would that be? Right? So I can say there we go. I can include a string. What else can I include? Numbers. Okay. Is there anything else? Arrays. And what it's going to do with arrays is that if we have an array, it's going to process each member of the array as if it was whatever, right? So if you put an array of like a string, a number, and a JSX expression, all those are going to show just kind of in order. So const so let me just say, yeah, emojis, obviously. And 50. And if I put so all of those got put in kind of at the same level, right? So we'll basically go through the array and kind of figure out which ones they can do. Okay, so what are some things that are going to be ignored? right, true or false. So let's put true here, false, and I heard undefined, null, and functions. Okay, now if we look here in the we're going to see, okay, so here's some yikes and 50, but after that, there's nothing. It just got ignored. This? Yeah. If you say const true equals something, unexpected token. No who's on first. Or true's on first in this case. I know, it's a terrible joke. Anyone know what who's on first is? Okay. It's some of you. Google. I will include that in my notes. All right. Okay, so what is going to break this if we put this in? Well, an object. If we look at the console log here, we're going to say like, hey, minified React error, blah, blah, blah. Error decoder, objects are not valid as a React child. Found object with keys, blah, blah, blah. That ain't good, right? So that doesn't work. I'm going to use a JSX comment to put that out. Basically, anything that isn't one of the top ones is going to go here. And here's a really common one that is not going to work out the way you thought it would. New date. Object's not valid as a React child. Found blah, 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 blah. Now, what would have happened if we put this in EJS? You know, da-da, percentage sign equals, and we had new date. What would EJS do? It's got to be an EJS playground, right? Well, so have some fun, var blah, blah, blah. Let's do equals new date. Oh, it kind of turns it into that, new date. How about just a blank object? Well, it makes it into the string object. So basically what happens is that EJS will call toString on whatever you put in there. React will freak out. And that's for the best. You should be defining how it does toString, not expecting the default behavior. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and okay. Save, yeah. Okay. I'm going to fork this. So for the most part, any valid JSX is valid HTML. Well, that's not exactly true, right? Because we can include a few things, dynamic content, that sort of thing. But one of the things is that, well, we can turn any HTML into JSX, right? Well, yes. Except, like, there's a lot of overlap. But there's like 4 cases where we can't quite turn HTML into a valid JSX expression on its own. Okay? And we're going to go through those real quick. So I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. So here's a JSX expression. Const image tag, pretty common thing we'd want to do. Let's get an image URL. from philmurray.com. Yeah, that's the one. Okay. So how would we write an image tag? Right, one of these things. What's the tag name? IMG. Sorry, let me keep on writing. The source is going to be, well, that, right? And when I might even just say equals, right? Cool. And I should be able to say, you may already be noticing something. Why won't this work? We'll see what this says. Unterminated JSX contents. Now this would be a totally valid HTML tag. But it's not a valid JSX tag. We have to have, if it opens, it has to have a closing element. If it doesn't, if it is self-closing, or if it's on its own, we have to make sure it's self-closing. All right? So that is, it's JavaScript with XML, so the XML rules apply. Okay? Let's do a couple of, let's get some Meet the Ipsums going on here. Let me know when you see one you want to see. I heard the brains. All right, zombie Ipsum. By the way, what does a vegan zombie eat? Grains. It was really important I do the arms for that joke. All right. I once told a friend that joke on the phone, and she said, "You just put your arms up, didn't you?" And I was like, "You know me well." I was kind of just, I was lying down, and I was kind of on the grains, like that. That's how I do. All right, so got a couple paragraphs here. I'm going to include const description equals. There's one paragraph. A closed tag, that's good. So I might have like description, right? Oh, and of course I wanted to have, it's actually a 2-paragraph thing, so let me grab that. Oh, it's interesting. I feel like there's some Latin about zombies in here. It's classy. All right. So yeah, I'm going to make another tag, right? That should work fine. Why isn't this okay? For me to be able to use a JS expression on its own, it has to have one root element. And this has 2 root elements. There's a p tag and then there's another p tag, right? So my choice is either, usually my go-to is I wrap them in a div, right? Another thing I can do is put them in an array, right? Comma space. And now it's 2. That works. There is another option. There is a React has a thing called the React.fragment that you can use. Because basically this is going to have some behavior, but for right now, just do arrays. Arrays is fine. All right. So that's the second thing. Here's the third thing. I want to have this dude is awesome, and it's just going to be, an EM tag. I want it to be bold and italic, right? EM, strong. This dude is awesome, right? Then I have to close those off. Why doesn't that work? The order of my tags. If I'm going to close a tag, it has to be the last one I opened. That's the rule. If I'm closing a tag, the last one has to be the one I opened. So I open the EM, and then I open the strong. I have to close the strong, and then close the EM. This is awesome. Right? Same thing, by the way, BR/. Okay. And then the last thing is comments. Here's a good old HTML comment, and an XML comment too, right? Should be valid. Made by Joel. Right? Doesn't know what to do with this. So to do a comment in JSX, it is, I'm going to open up one of these. I'm going to use a C-style comment with the /*, blah, 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 */. Made by Joel. And now this works just fine. This does not make its way into the HTML, but that's fine. Okay. This is JSX boo-boos. Okay. All right, so now we've spent a bit of time talking about how to write good JSX. The next step is really that we want to start creating components. And I'm gonna get slightly into components. Like I don't want to spend too much time in this lecture talking about how to make components, because we're going to have a breakout on that. We're going to be making more components on breakouts. We're going to have more talk about like functional components versus class-based components. We're going to talk about props and state. We're going to be talking about passing data and making kind of interconnecting your components with each other. But and you're going to have had a lot of exercise doing that. I guess actually the one thing I forgot is logic and looping in JSX. So I'm going to talk about that first. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about components, and then we're going to be done. So let's do fork. So what are we going to be making a little component about, everybody? I mean, like, somebody give me a thing that we can make something about, like a vertical, like a recipe, or like a dog, or like a game, or like a something. What are we kind of describing here? Shoes. Dope. All right. So, I'm just going to talk about like, yeah, shoes. Just want to talk about shoe. So let's describe in data a shoe. What shoe are we doing? Air Force Ones? Yeah. All right. Crocs? I don't even know. That is true. All right. I feel like there has to be a Wikipedia. If there is like a Nelly song about these, there has to be a Wikipedia article, right? Get me riding in my Air Force Ones. Anybody remember this song? Ah, I hate being old. Okay. So the Air Force began with the Air Force One. Really? Air Force 82? Interesting. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to start... where did my... There it is. I'm going to describe the shoe. Const shoe. Equals, and that's color gradients in processing, which is also interesting, but not what we're dealing with today. Did I save this? I hope so. Some good code. Did I lose my... Did I lose my... There it is. Okay. Too many tabs. Const shoe equals... so the brand is Nike. Name. Air Force One. First release. Or like, yeah, release year is 1981, was it? Or 85? I was released in 1981. So the right, so we have that. What are some words we would use to describe the Air Force One? Somebody? Like, give me some hashtags here. Yeah. Funky fresh. Yeah, I like it. Tags. I'm going to make an array. Funky fresh. Okay. Somebody give me something else. Sneakerhead. Yeah, yeah. God, I gotta stop going to that page. Sneakerhead. How about retro Velcro? Retro Velcro. All right. So, and also I'm going to want an image URL. Let's go image Google CA. Air Force. Alright. I like it. Copy image address. Cool. Yeah. All right, so I want to start making an expression built from this shoe. Yeah? And so, okay. And so, like, obviously, I'm going to have an image, right? And image is going to be an image tag. Source is shoe.imgirl. Like, this is the sort of stuff that we've done before, right? I'm not... Not really... Oh. Maybe style is width 100%. There we go. All right. So, there's the shoe. I might want to be able to say, like, okay, if this is more than 20 years old, I might want to be able to include the tag that says, like, yeah, old school. So I want to have, like, just a little classic thing, something, I don't know. So I might say const classic flag, or maybe I'm going to say let classic flag. Now this might, I'm going to say is undefined, because I might not have something. But I might say if shoe dot release year minus new date dot get full year is greater than 20, classic flag equals certified classic, right? Let me just do a console, or maybe an alert real quick. Alert. Okay, thank you. Didn't mean that. Minus 33. Yeah, I went in the wrong direction. Okay, thank you. Maybe I'm going to take that out, just real quick. And that's why we debug, right? Like, you know, we look at it and being like, hey, this is broken. All right, so now we have the certified classic. Certified classic. Okay, so if the year was then, we turn this into, I guess 1999, that goes away. It's no longer certified classic. All right, but this is indeed certified classic. So we can take this line here and actually simplify it down really easily. Turn it into a one-liner. And that one-liner might look like this. One thing I might say, const is classic equals right? Okay, so we're cool with that. I might be able to say, hey, oh, where did you come from? Right. I might be able to say this. Instead of saying let classic flag equals undefined and then doing another if statement, because that's a bit, that is imperative, not declarative, which isn't the worst thing in the world. If you code like this, that's fine. But kind of a shorter way of expressing it, and when we can do inline really easily, is going to be this. Classic flag equals is classic. Then I want this. Otherwise, I want, you know, undefined. No, I do need to say const though. Woo. Right? So now I have that. And of course the thing is that why am I using undefined? I'm using undefined because undefined doesn't render. Well, neither do Booleans, which is part of the reason they have Booleans like this, because they don't render. So I can also just kind of shortcut this. This is a good way of choosing between two things based on a Boolean, but choosing on whether or not to include something at all could just be is classic and this thing, right? And then that's still there. What it's saying is, oh, if it's false, then just the classic flag is false, and therefore I will ignore it. Otherwise, it is this certified classic. Yes? Yeah, the question is if instead of assigning it to a variable, could I just do this inside? And the answer is absolutely YARP. So let's do that. I can take this, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to put that right below. And now we should see it twice. I can't tell if Nicholas is being like, what? Or yawning. He's yawning. It was yawning. It looked for a moment there, he was like, what? And every now and then I see that in lecture, and I'm not sure if people are like, or if they're like, it's hard to tell. Because sometimes it is legitimately like you get people who are like, and that doesn't expand further. They're just kind of stuck. And I don't know. This could be that moment of revelation for you. I don't know you. All right. So now we have, here is logically switching between two things. Here is logical inclusion or exclusion, right? And the last thing I want to do is looping. Now, when we're doing EJS, how did we loop? We use scriptlets. Yes, scriptlets is the correct word there. We would do like for blank and blank, right? Or do a for each, for blank of blank. You know, we'd do some sort of for loop. And for loop starts with an I. Imperative. For loop is a command. Do this over and over, right? It's really concerned with where that cursor is going. But we want something that's a little more declarative. So rather than thinking about it as we're going to create a new thing X amount of times for each member of a collection, rather we're going to say, okay, we're going to take this collection of data and turn it into this separate collection of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const tags equals, and I'm going to take shoe.tag. So yeah, tags. And I'm going to take this collection of strings, and I'm taking a collection of strings, and for each string in the collection, I want a JSX tag, right? What tool do we have for taking an array that has one type of thing and making an array of a new type of thing? That's right. That's right. I'm glad you all know that. I'm a little pleased. I'm super pleased. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is that for each of these, I am going to include a span. And it's going to have the text in it. It's going to have style of like background. Yeah, blue. Why not? Background blue. Color white. Padding. Oh, not. Has to be a string. It can be background or background color. Background itself is a shorthand for a bunch of things being put in. So if you just put the color as a background, that's fine. If you put an image as a background, that's fine. It'll figure out which one of those you mean. Padding 0.5 Font size is 0.5 And then we're going to put the text in here. And I'm going to make a p tag here. And I'm going to include tags. And indeed, we have funky fresh sneakerhead retro Velcro. I'm going to also margin of 0.5 I think I'm going to take out that font size. Funky Fresh Sneakerhead Retro Velcro. I might do like a, I might say the margin is, it's yeah, 0.5, 0.5, 0.5, 0. So they line up this way. Yeah, there you go. And then border radius is going to be 0.5 m. Say look more like, come on, buddy. Don't crap out on me now. You were fine a moment ago. You know it. Let's reload this, see what it does. There we go. Funky Fresh Sneakerhead Retro Velcro. Right? So I took an array of strings and got out an array of spans. That's the declarative part, is that we are composing. So we want, what I want isn't to create a span for each thing, like go put in a span, append to this to that, put this into that, blah, 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 right? We're composing. So we are just saying, hey, as an expression, and I want a bunch of spans, one for each of these. I'm getting that array out. And indeed, I have those tags. Okay, cool. Now, we have been sort of making components as we go here, but we haven't been really like defining a component class. We've just been sort of like putting together some JSX expressions and sort of patching them together, right? Now, React, when we actually are building apps in React, they are component-based. We would want to build components here. So I'm going to talk briefly about that. For the sake of conversation, what we can think of components as classes. And there's going to be a component definition which helps us, like, we have either a class or a function that helps us create a new component of some sort of type, right? And that class defines the behavior for every component of the type it makes. This is classic OOP. You guys learned a bit about OOP this last week. Who can tell me something about OOP? What do you know? Who can tell me one thing they learned? Did anyone learn one thing? Modularity. Good. Yeah. That's part of it. It's modularity, is that we can kind of like inherit or compose or whatever to make new things. Anyone else? You have knowing eyes, Andrea. Nope. All right. Fair enough. Okay, so so basically the main thing to think is that class is to blueprint as instance is to house. The class is the blueprint, and from the blueprint we can make many houses, right? We actually have to go to the business of actually making the house, but the class becomes a blueprint. In the same way, we have component classes and we have component instances, and the instances help us, we can make a certain instance. So, so that means that as we go through, we have to kind of build out, like, we have to look through and be like, okay, what type of things do we see? So this actually leads us to, I'm going to start talking about composition by talking about decomposition. Now, the tools, we have these great tools, and also we have this great puppy. Oh, yeah, you're getting, sorry guys, just need to take a moment for, oh, come here. Okay, so we're talking about React. What do you know about React, buddy? I tell you, his fear of public speaking. We've been working on this. Come on, sit. Yeah, I love you too. Okay. Decomposition. So we have a lot of tools for composition. You saw me kind of build JSX expressions from other JSX expressions, right? You saw me put things together to make big JSX expressions. Decomposition is is kind of a planning strategy that goes in the opposite direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to, I'm going to clean some of this up, collectui.com. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose something. I'm going to choose something off the list here. So stop me when you are interested in seeing one of these. You can read those. Oh. Monitoring dashboard? Okay. It's not the one I would have gone with. No, it's fine. Actually, I think I've used this one in the lecture. I'm just being a cheek. All right. Let's choose this mobile version. So this, come on. Oh. Quel dommage. I'm not sure what the story is here. Let me try. I wondered when I could kind of get. Okay. So, I want to kind of focus on this image here. Because let's say that you have a crackerjack graphic designer on your team, and they say, okay, I've given you this PSD, I want you to make this live. Which, by the way, this is a situation that you may actually find yourself coming up to. And we're going to be using React. So what's my first step is to start figuring out what components I have. To start blocking this out as a series of components. I might even just take the image and the component, like break it into slices, and then the image is like, oh, that's my part of this, right? So what do you see? What are some parts of this that you see? There are two nav bars. Let's talk about that top nav. What do you see?
It's kind of like I kind of see like there's three areas to it, where that second nav bar is going to be on the area.
Okay. So yeah, it seems like.
Tabs or something.
Yeah, I mean, it does. We don't know for sure, but it seems like if we click on a different tab up here, that maybe this thing changes too. So we'd have to see more to find out for sure. But it seems like this is a thing we're going to switch out. So basically, we have this nav bar, and then we have the kind of the everything else. And right now, we are looking at the activities view. This is the activity view, right? This is where all the activity view lives. So now we've established we have a nav bar, and we have an activity view, I guess. And this could be an activity view or a team view or a message view. So let's start by saying that given this, design, we seem to have, like our app is going to be, it's going to have a nav bar, and it's going to have, well, either maybe a Teams view, or a activity view, or a messages view. So we could have, right. Well, that's the thing, is that is part of the search bar. So I'm going to say nav bar goes like that, and then we have this, right? Okay. We haven't figured out any of the information that goes to it, but we do know that based on the one we're currently looking at, we're going to see one of those things. Okay. So const, and that's the app render there. How about const navbar? What's in that? Now this isn't real JSX. I'm just kind of roughing this out here to see like what it would eventually be, right? Well, we have a logo, so we have this whole like shape here, and then we also have some tabs. So we have like div, and we're gonna have some tabs, and then we also have like search over on the bar corner here, right? Search. Okay. So then we have, let's take a look at this activity view. This activity view is very, well, active. In fact, we might start making these into classes. So maybe class app extends React.components. We don't know what state it's going to have. We do know that any component is going to have a render method. It's not complete without a render method. And that render method is going to have, well, probably some div, right? That's like the whole page here. And then I might even say that like, so this is return. Right? And I'm going to have a certain active view. So I'm going to have probably some state. In fact, I'll just right now just say the current view is activity. And I might say that like const, current view tab is this, and then I'm going to say current view is going to be, well, if the current view tab is activity, then this is going to be a activity view. Otherwise, if the current view tab is teams, then it's going to be teams view. Otherwise, it's going to be the messages view. So I'm deciding which of these three I'm going to see based on what the current view tab is, right? And I'm using nested whatever. There's other ways we could have done, like, you know, current view equals blank. If current view tab is activity, then make it activity view. Else, if it's teams, then make it teams view, right? But that's what's going to go here. Current view. And we can start kind of building this out. We have that const app. Let's make that. That's actually the things we just did. We're going to have, it's going to have a nav bar and all these different views. So up here, I'm going to say class nav bar with a capital B, because I said capital B down here, and I just need to be consistent. And here I'm going to say, all right, render, return div That's all that needs to be, right? I do. You are right. Okay. All right, and then we're going to need an activity view. Well, what goes into the activity view? Now, I haven't really made anything yet. Like, I haven't designed any divs or anything. All I've been doing here, the point of this has been like, okay, so what components will there be? And then I'll fill them in with something later. Or the cool part about this is I can be like, okay, a different file I'm going to say navbar, different file I'm going to say activity view. Cool. Hey, my team, you guys are my team now. How about you write the navbar? How about you write the activity view? You write the teams view. You write the messages view. I'm going to get drunk. Like, I have the ability now to, like, you guys work on different files and different things. It's fine, right? In the activity view, what do we have here? Like, so everything below the top nav bar, what do we have? Okay, cool. So we have this section here, and it has like a date time, and it has some stat. It looks like there's a thing here, so it's probably going to switch between views. There's going to be some sort of carousel. What's it? What else do we have? We have a calendar. Currently February 2016, right? There might be some relation between what the calendar does and what we're seeing. I don't know yet. I'd need some more information from the designer, or I make it up as I go along. What else do we see? Okay, we have task. So within task, what do we have? Within tasks, we have tasks. That is correct. We have these little task things, right? And it says like who like I don't know, like GFO 27. So it looks like it's, you know, kind of a category, some sort of ID number that we could probably expand. There might be an expanded view for this. We see who is responsible for it. Someone along the, I don't know if you've ever heard of RACI, R-A-C-I, responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. 4 levels of like being involved with the task. So, yeah. Within the calendar, what are some of our components? We're just performing further decomposition, further breaking down. Yep, so we have what the month and year is. We have the view that we are currently looking at, right? And the one above it might change based on the view. Like if I'm looking at day, it's going to be February 17th, not just February, right? Also, I'm realizing that February has 31 days on there, but that's another story entirely. Right? So it has that, has the month, has the specific view, and it might switch between 3 different views here. One for the day. There might be a day view, there might be a week view, there might be a month view. That's specific to that. So when we talk about components, this is actually part of what we mean. We mean that like, hey, this big thing's going to break down to smaller things. We may say, hey, it might switch between smaller things. It might go between different picks here. So. You are thinking of there is the blueprint and there is the instance. So there has to be some sort of blueprint of a component. Now, you're mostly going to be using classes for the first little bit, but there's also functions. You can use functions, and we'll get into that in the breakout. But yeah, the idea is that we're going to have a definition of a component that we're going to be using to make instances of components. So there is a calendar, or actually, let's use this for a second. There is a task item component that I have somewhere. Class task item extends react.component, right? That exists somewhere, and it has a render method. But these are all instances. They're all different from each other. They're all different instances of the same thing, right? So they are all they're all instances of the task item thing. But if I want to change the behavior of all of these, I change the behavior at the task item class. And then I might make it smarter based on. I might say something like, hey, if you can't find this person's image, I want just to have an avatar. You know? That might be something I make. If you can't find their image, I want to be filled in with the appropriate stock photo, which is clearly what happened here. Yes. Generally speaking, I'm going to create one instance of app. There's going to be some things of which I only ever create one instance in one given. Although technically speaking, if she's using this and you're using this, she has one instance on her computer and you have one instance on yours. And they're both still instances of the same class. Yeah. So even if we have a class we're only like probably using one instance, we always think of this as, hey, we're reusing this over and over. And we kind of plan to use it over and over, even though we might not. If that makes sense. Okay. So I am going to go ahead and release you. When we come back to breakout, we're going to be talking more about constructing components. That's going to be your work for the day, is going to be constructing components. I wish you good luck and Godspeed.